I'm Reuben Bresler. I'm here in the Sideboard, and I have a brief statement to make. You know, Brad Nelson wrote recently that he thinks that Trading Post is good enough in Standard, and a lot of people don't believe him. Well, I have here Eric Brown, who believes that not only is Trading Post good enough in Standard, it's good enough in Legacy.
It is.
And we have here in front of me a deck that I'm going to call Post Stax, but you have a different name for it. Why don't you tell us the name and briefly explain some of the cards in the deck?
Well, back in Richmond, we call this deck Layer 7B. It started on a conversation that we had about we can play anything in Legacy. And it started with this guy right here, Gideon Jura. And the conversation went into, well, if we animate Gideon Jura with a Humility in play, is he a 6/6? And he is, because of Layer 7B, which is a sub-layer of Power and Toughness.
Right, so briefly explain what the sub-layers are.
Basically, you know, sub-layers of Power and Toughness are what determines a creature's Power and Toughness. The second one is sets, so that's things like Humility makes all creatures a 1/1.
Right, it sets everything to a 1/1.
Correct. And Gideon Jura says Gideon Jura is a 6/6.
Sure.
So multiple effects applied in the same layer are applied in timestamp order. So if I have a Humility in play and then animate my Gideon or my Mishra's Factory, for instance, my Mishra's Factory is a 2/2, my Gideons are 6/6s, and they can come across with full force instead of just being 1/1s, while my opponent's creatures are still 1.
Excellent, yeah, and so this is similar to the mono white stacks of old.
Yeah. Got a lot of the same elements.
Elspeth Knight, Knight Errant, you have Crucible Wasteland, Trinisphere, but you have a couple of other non-traditional choices in addition to the Trading Post, including, but not limited to, Sundial of the Infinite. Talk a little bit about Sundial.
Sundial of the Infinite is a wonderfully difficult card for people to understand. So the main thing with Sundial, like your primary win condition is you want to assemble Sundial the Infinite and Smokestack.
Right.
The idea being on my turn, I'm going to roll up my Smokestack, then I'm going to activate my Sundial and pass the turn. Okay. You're going to sacrifice some permanents.
Sure.
It's going to come back to me. I'm going to roll up my Sundial and end my turn.
Right.
And
so
I'm just going to run you out of
cards. You can stack the two abilities on Smokestack the way you want to.
Right. So I'm going to roll up. I'm going to add a soot counter, and then with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, I'm going to end the turn and pass it back to you.
And so you'll just do that until your opponent has no permanents.
Right. Or until they see what's happening and they concede. Right. Which also, if you assemble like an Ensnaring Bridge log, you can keep your hand empty with Sundial. Also on Ensnaring Bridge, we do have a couple other neat cards in Bottled Cloister.
Right.
Bottled Cloister lets me Howling Mine on my turn and lock them out with Ensnaring Bridge on their turn.
Yep.
Sundial is also great just because people are really confused by this card. They don't realize that, you know, if they fetch on the end of my turn, I can stifle it with Sundial.
Right. And you were telling a story about how someone tried to wasteland you.
Yeah. My first round opponent, I turn went City of Traders, Sundial, pass. And he's like, okay, I'll wasteland your city. And I'm like, okay, I'll end the turn. You're up. And then the next turn was Plains Elspeth and got the concession.
Wow. So, excellent. So yeah. So
the faces that I get casting Sundial are making this deck worth playing.
Sure. So tell me a couple of the tricks that you do with the Trading Post.
Trading Post is a really new addition to the deck. I'm not gonna lie, this is actually the first tournament I've played with the Trading Post. Jay DeLazier, who helped design the deck, this was his edition. So far, Trading Post has gained some life. In theory,
sure.
In theory, you know, you have Elspeth. You can basically get back whatever artifact you need to get back that's been destroyed.
Sure.
You can make goat tokens, and if you have a Humility in play, your goat tokens are swinging.
Nice.
Which is really cool.
That's excellent. Yeah, and you can also get rid of your Smokestacks.
Yeah,
if you need to,
you can get rid of your Smokestack if you need to get rid of your bridge to start swinging with Gideon.
Or your Bottled Cloister if you so happen to have a Chalice you need to get rid of.
Yeah, if you arguably end up with a Chalice on 2 and need to cast a Sundial, you can do that, and then your Trading Post lets you get your Sundial or your Chalice back and do it again.
Excellent. And so let's talk briefly about your sideboard over here. You have another Bottled Cloister. You have some Timely Reinforcements.
I do have some Timely Reinforcements, and they have been ridiculous.
They've been very good.
They've been very good.
Now, one of the more interesting choices to me is Aura of Silence.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what that's for.
If I somehow run into the mirror,
oh, geez.
Aura of Silence. There is one other person playing the deck.
That is true.
But like Enchantress and in various decks like that where I'm going to want it, the Disenchant's very similar. Aethersworn Canonist actually not supposed to be on the sideboard. I was looking for a card called Honor the Fallen from Mercadian Masks.
Honor the Fallen, colorless and a white instant, rare from Mercadian Masks.
Exiles all creatures from all graveyards. You gain a life for each creature exiled.
And so that was intended to be Dredge Hate?
Yeah, basically to go along with the 3 Tormod
scripts. To go along with 3 more Tormod scripts. Well, this will also be able to catch Storm.
Yeah, so it's not a bad card, but it was not ideal because I'm not terribly worried about Storm between Chalice and Trinisphere.
Sure. What other? You were saying you would make a change to the mana base?
I've absolutely hated this Horizon Canopy.
You would rather
it's
just
been
be another
worthless.
ancient
I think it needs
tomb,
to be another Ancient Tomb or just another basic.
Well,
like, this thing has done nothing.
There's certainly a lot of things that you can change about the deck. There's plenty of Enchantress, or not Enchantress, Stax elements in Legacy, especially in white, that you can sort of interact with, and this just looks adorable and fantastic.
It is very cute.
And you're 2-0.
So
and
far.
I would wager that we will see you in the feature match area very soon.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Eric Brown, I appreciate you bringing this unique deck to the deck tech area here.
It certainly is.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for watching the Sideboard.